Russell, his VP of partnerships, just told me the other day, well over half of their customers have come from his books. I can't tell you the number of doors it's opened for clients, gotten on a big name podcast they've tried to do for years and couldn't get on. All of a sudden they publish a book and the person's inviting them on for free.
The different models of book publishing, the through line across the board is you still have to figure out the marketing.
Definitely. And the big traditional companies don't care about the marketing.
Coaching and being sort of an influencer is not a business model.
100%. There's no added benefit of doing a pre-launch over doing and we were outperforming the pre-launches like 10 to 1. It was crazy. A lot of the mistakes are made before they even launch the book. But the biggest one is,
Cris, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have enjoyed your recent journey to Europe.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, Europe was great. It's always nice to come home though. So vacation's always good, recharge the batteries, but no place like home sweet home for sure.
I am with you. Before we kicked off, we were talking about our lifetime travels and our desire to stay in one place these days.
Yes, absolutely. Travel's great, but again, no place like home. It's nice to come home and have a nice, see the break in my schedule for a few weeks with no travel. And it's a good thing. So kind of time to unwind and reset.
Well, I'll enjoy it while it lasts for me. You can do the same.
For sure.
And let's talk about business and books. So you have Game Changer Publishing, which has done books for a number of people that I know, a number of clients of Easy Pay Direct. But before we talk about kind of what books offer to businesses, why that's something that a bunch of our clients do, what brought you into the publishing space in the first place? How did you get to now?
Sure. Yeah, good question. So actually, I was speaking on stages and years ago, I started off in 1998, kind of dating myself there, just turned 50. But we were speaking and training and doing webinars and traveling and seminars. Back in the day, you go to a seminar and there's 20 speakers and everybody was selling their own thing and that kind of thing. And got connected after a speech that I did one day with Dean Graziosi. And went into Dean's studio. They offered me to come in and do an infomercial with a book. And nice. We published a book very quickly.
Sounds very Dean-like.
Yes, very, very quickly. Put it on TV nationwide. And we were selling a book that drove people to our back-end high-ticket offers. Again, this is 20 years ago or so. But back then, we had the book we were selling. And then inside of the book, we were driving people to a $10,000 and $25,000 high-ticket offer. So that whole process and that whole experience, we did very well doing that. But at the end of that, after I sold my business a few years later, the fact that I was using that book to drive readers to a back-end high-ticket offer to get more clients, bring more credibility, more visibility, really authority positioning for myself, that was the biggest thing. And oddly enough, people were asking, after I sold my company, people were like, how'd you build a list so quickly? How'd you get all those speaking engagements? How'd you get invited to all those webinars? How'd you do this? How'd you do that? The book was it. The book was the thing. And that's what helped us drive clients and build our database and ultimately build our company. And so started consulting and consulted on that for some time. And then eventually decided to take it under our control in terms of timeframes, quality, all of that. Started our own company. And that's how it was born. So interesting how you meet somebody and one thing changes your whole entire trajectory of your career for the next 20 years.
The high ticket back end and having a big high ticket offer to monetize any front end has become very popular in business today, specifically in sort of the internet marketing space online. 20 years ago or longer, 25 years ago in 98, it was a much longer cycle to make that make sense. To put something in a book as a call to action and sell it from the pages of the book, very different than today, where you can sort of sell the book and then immediately before somebody even reads the book, tell them to go buy some other shit.
And back then, $10,000 was super high ticket. Whereas today it's like you see people with $50,000 offers, $80,000, $100,000 offers. So it was a different path for sure. And ultimately we drove them to a coaching program. And then once they enrolled in coaching, we actually upsold to a 25K higher ticket program. But the internet marketing world, it's funny when I've sold 2 companies and came back and here we are. And it's like, It's changed a lot, but it's still going. A lot of the same players, a lot of the same people, which is really interesting to me because I thought 20 years ago when I sold, I'm like, there's no way this stuff's going to stick around for 20 years, and then here we are, people are still doing webinars, still doing all the things. So it's really interesting.
It seems to be true that the fundamentals of marketing don't change. And, you look at, like you're talking about a book funnel from 98, and people are rolling out book funnels today, as we'll talk about, that crush. And one of the differences is the tempo at which things happen. And people build on top of it. So, if you back out before 98 and you look at like Dan Kennedy and before that even, these really long cycle sales of physical newsletters and still books then, but getting attention and driving it to an offer to monetize the initial cost of the ad, which is how all ads and marketing work, right? But today we see people spinning up these 7, 8 plus figure companies very quickly. And they're built on the backbone of you and doing those things in 98 and Graziosi and doing that and Dan Kennedy before, et cetera, et cetera. Why go into the publishing space versus just launching another thing where you are leveraging a book and selling a high ticket thing on the back end?
Well, honestly, when I was consulting, like after I sold my first company, I was consulting. The biggest thing that I was getting asked about was the book and kind of like building the thing, right? And so a lot of the clients that I was consulting for, big names you would recognize, they would say, well, I've got this thing over here I'm selling. I've got this course. I've got this coaching program. They were just looking for, I felt like more people, even today, there's a lot of things. People are selling a lot of things and services and products, but they still need a way to drive people to that offer. Remember, when we started, there was no social media. There was no Amazon.com, none of that. Like there was none of those things. Facebook didn't exist. So there was no paid ads. Now, there's Google at the time, Google ads, but now you've got, people are like building a brand. More people are interested in the influencer thing and building their brand and, going out and creating video content and that sort of thing. So it's a different play. But I feel like the one thing that's remained true the whole time is they still need a way to bring people to their back end. Sure, you can do paid ads, you can do organic traffic, but a book brings visibility, it brings credibility, it brings authority positioning. I can't tell you the number of doors it's opened for clients to get that have gotten on big stages or gotten a TEDx talk or gotten on a big name podcast that they've tried to do for years and couldn't get on without paying thousands of dollars. All of a sudden they publish a book and the person's inviting them on for free, that sort of thing. But I realized early on, that back then I had 3 little kids. Now my kids are grown. But it was tough to I didn't want to be stuck in coaching people every single week and doing one-on-one coaching. I was doing that. And honestly, I just burned out, from doing coaching call after coaching call after coaching call. And I was like, why not just help people, with a vehicle that actually helped grow my own business and show them the way. And people were asking, I'll pay you to show me the way. So after doing that 50 times, I was like, I could just start a company. I'm publishing books anyway, one off here, one off there. Why not just start a company? It was kind of a random thing. And I did it. And then we published 30 books our first month. And I was like, oh, I'm off to the races.
Yeah. Well, what I heard was you realized that coaching and being sort of an influencer is not a business model.
Right.
And kind of, it's a way to make money and you can make a lot of money doing it. But the burnout, this notion of having burnout and realizing that you were still responsible for doing the coaching, running the calls, et cetera. Even if you had group calls and individuals, you still had high ticket individual. You wanted a more stable business model that you didn't have to be the linchpin of.
Definitely. Coaching, it's an amazing thing, but it's a beating. Being the coach and being the face and being the brand, it's no joke. It's definitely, I have a huge amount of respect for the people doing it. It's just not something I wanted to do. And as I grew my business and my life evolved with kids and family and moving and all those things, I was just like, I really didn't want to spend all of my time doing that. And it was one of many things I was doing at the time when I started. I wasn't like, oh, going all in, going to have this publishing company. This is going to be it. I was doing a few different things and real estate and some different things. And I wasn't really thinking this is a full-time thing. And now it's grown into a massive company where this is like the thing. It's the only thing. So
Yeah,
it's been good.
I dig that. Well, I think it's important for entrepreneurs or people that are aspiring to be to recognize sort of the different stages. So, you know, coaching can be a really good opportunity, even into the, you look at a Tony Robbins who has a 9-figure plus coaching industry or company, but that's also the elite of the elite at that level. But there are lots that are in the 8-figure plus, and then there are lots that are $1 million. And there are tons that are 6 figures. And so if you're trading time for money, the ability to create something is there in that creator space. But as you start to scale that, it also becomes clear what some of the shortcomings are of being in that space.
100%. And it's the same with courses. Some people will say, a lot of people that are like retired, we get a lot of people that want to, like, they leave being a trauma surgeon and they're going to go consult and speak now. So they want to have a book out there to do that. And they don't recognize the difference between like courses, consulting, coaching. But with consulting and coaching, yes, you're trading your time for money. At least with courses, you're creating something one time. And for as long as that information is relevant, you can make money on it again and again and again. So you do the work once and you make money again and again. I don't like doing things where there's a ceiling. And with coaching, especially, now it's a little different because a lot more people doing one to many, but you still have a glass ceiling. You have only at so many hours in a day, right? So after you have so many clients, it's like, where else do you go from there in terms of growth? And as a typical entrepreneur, if there's no growth potential, I'm out.
I'm envisioning a whole bunch of shit talking course creators and coaches in the comments right now.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm not down talking. I'm just saying this was my personal, when you said, well, why this over that? That was my take. But obviously all of our clients have coaching, they have courses. Right. Every single one of our clients have those things. So I'm definitely not bashing it. It's just, I'm just saying it wasn't for me because I just looked at the different pros and cons of having courses or having coaching or all the things. And where I was for me in my life, I was like, I'm going to take this model instead.
Obviously, like Easy Pay Direct has thousands of clients that are content creators, coaches, consultants, et cetera. I love the business model, especially for people getting out of a 9-to-5 or creating a lifestyle. As a human, what I really care about is that people are clear on the outcomes that they're after and that their actions are in alignment with the outcomes that they're after. And Absolutely. So being very clear on what that end outcome is super important so that you know what actions have to be taken. And very often people get into a business model with a complete lack of understanding of what actually is needed. And then they find themselves mid-swing in it and they're like, oh shit, I didn't really want all this.
Yes, that's exactly what you just said. Like in alignment with what you think it is and what you're getting into is in alignment with how you want to live your life and the time that you have. And again, I was a mom of 3 small kids at the time. It was tough. It was like, I don't have bandwidth for all of this. Right. So I sold my company and moved in a different direction.
No question about it. Are you still doing real estate investment at all?
A little bit. Getting back into it's funny, after stepping away for so many years, stepping back into the Airbnb space. No desire to be like a landlord again with apartment buildings and houses and single family homes. Zero desire for that again. I went through the whole subprime market that crashed in 2008 and the whole thing. And had lots of properties. So not interested in being a landlord that way, not really interested in flipping so much. But the Airbnb market does interest me. And honestly, more so, it's kind of for selfish reasons, buying Airbnbs in areas that I would want to go and visit myself, have a house here, have a house there, and then just Airbnb them out to, pay the mortgage here and there. So that's kind of what we're looking into.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm huge. I'm very, very involved in real estate, and I'm huge on sort of the secondary and tertiary benefits of a given property. So It's like, here's the core use case, but what else? What other value does it provide to me? And very often it is a place for friends or family to stay, or a commercial location that I have some other alignment with, right? It offers me some business opportunity. Otherwise, that's the fun thing about real estate to me, is sort of like what else it offers.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And I'll be honest, I've been looking at some other models, not on purpose, but I have a daughter that's getting married in the fall. We started going wedding venue shopping, looking at all these wedding venues. And once I started seeing that these wedding venues are booked up for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, I'm like, wow, interesting. So you could go buy this property. They're charging, 10 to 30 grand a day. You rent it up, whatever. Most of them were rented out, like literally 5 days a week for at least a year out. I'm thinking, I was doing the math in my head going, this might be an interesting model too. Like buy something like a wedding venue type space with villas or Airbnbs around it. So yeah, that kind of thing, kind of on the hunt and on the lookout for something like that too. Not that I want to be in the wedding venue space genre. And, that's not really what I want to do with my life, but wouldn't be that hard to hire someone and have them manage it. And so you're kind of thinking outside of the box that way with real estate as well. And looking for a property like that. So it's fun.
That's great. Well, I think that's a big part of the game is first understanding where all the opportunities are.
100%.
And then at some point it's like, how many can you actually bite off? And what do you have to say no to stay focused?
Right. Well, that's our entrepreneur type A people brain. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm always looking. It's funny. My husband always goes, you're always looking at everything like a business, like everything we do, everything you look at. It's like, you're always looking at it through a business lens.
Well,
and I'm like, it's not on purpose. I'm just wired that way. Right. I don't purposely, I wasn't going in going, I think I might buy a wedding venue, but it's just, that's the way our brains work. Good or for bad. So.
Yeah. Makes me want to go look at real estate and destinations I want to spend time in.
Right. For sure.
But before I do that, let's get back to book publishing. So, Game Changer Publishing, why does somebody want a book in their business? And are there certain business models that should do it versus shouldn't?
You don't have to be an entrepreneur for a book to bring value to your life and business. But I feel like entrepreneurs, it really does, because most entrepreneurs have a really great story. Like there's all these, remember the, what was the show back in the day with Donnie Deutsch? The Big Idea, I think it was called The Big Idea. Like people come on, these entrepreneurs, or like Shark Tank, these entrepreneurs come on, they tell their stories, they're doing their thing. So all these entrepreneurs, it's really cool. It's actually really fascinating because we work with 7, 8, 9, 10 figure entrepreneurs that have really incredible stories to tell. Like they've been to hell and back, right? And they've come out on top and they're doing these things and they're talking about the struggle and what they're facing, what they're doing, but they're using it primarily as a tool to tell their stories, because when, facts tell, stories sell. When people can relate to something, they will engage, right? So you've got that piece of it. And then you've got this tactical piece over here. Like people always want to know, how did you do it? How did you get from here to here? Okay, you built a $30 million Amazon business. How'd you do it? How would I do that? Right? So they're looking at that from that perspective too. So we've been able to find this kind of like niche market where we only serve entrepreneurs. And it's mostly people telling their stories, but then that they have something over here where they're driving the client to. So there's a tactical piece of it. Like, here's the how-to of how I did it. Here's my story. Here's the how-to, and here's how you can do it too. That's who we've served primarily. But I will say we get a lot of like doctors, lawyers, accountants, people like that too, who've left their 9 to 5 or sold their business or retired, but they're not ready to really hang it up and do nothing. So they're like, oh, I'm going to consult, or I want to speak, or I want to do TEDx talks, or I want to be on that stage, or I want to do podcast interviews, or I want to have my own podcast, right? So they're using the book as a way to get their message out to the world, their story, but also use it as a tool to drive people to a back end, whatever the back end is. And quite frankly, if someone says, I don't have coaching software, an app, if they don't have anything, it's usually not a good fit. We don't publish their books, because the book publishing, it's not like you just quit your $250,000 a year job and you come publish a book and make millions. It doesn't work like that, right? The money's really made. I mean, if you sell a $20 book, you have to sell a whole lot of $20 books to make $1 million, right? So it's really harnessing the power of the book to drive people to the back end. So, and typically it's coaching, consulting, some sort of offer, a software, an app, something. There's got to be something there. And the book has to be done a certain way to get the people from, hey, I'm going to read this book, to, oh, I'm going to raise my hand for more information, that kind of thing. There is a kind of a method to the madness, I feel like.
Got it. So I'm going to summarize. What I heard was Game Changer is largely about creating a book that serves as lead gen for some other high ticket offer for a given business or entrepreneur. The point that's been highlighted quite a bit is this high ticket nature, right? It's a high ticket offer on the back end. But you also mentioned stuff like a software on the back end, which is usually like low ticket recurring, right? A low dollar amount that happens over and over and over. Are there certain business models that lend themselves to this and certain that don't? I mean, can you think of some that would be like, hey, if this is your model or if this is how you operate, you don't want to write a book for a lead gen?
There's a lot of people that don't fall into that model that want to like tell their story, right? But the people that are looking to tell their story, many times it's a legacy play, right? It's like, I just want to leave my legacy. I want all of my company, employees to remember this. I want my children to remember this about me and what I did. We had a guy that like invented something he didn't invent the Roth IRA, but something about that. Like he was turning 100 years old. And he's like, look, before I die, I just want to document all of this. And it's kind of like a legacy play. He didn't care about the money. He didn't care about book sales, none of that. It's just a legacy play. I mean, I would never say, oh, you should never write a book. I mean, there's always people that can come and write a book. I just feel like if you're writing it for monetization purposes or growth or branding, that's really more our niche. Whereas the people over here who are like, I just want to tell my life story, like a biography or an autobiography, and I'm not downplaying that. I'm just saying that's really not what we specialize in or what we're good at. So if someone comes to us like that, or they want to write whatever, a certain kind of book that we don't publish, we try to refer them elsewhere. Because really our sweet spot and what we're really good at is what we've talked about with the entrepreneurs and the back and the high ticket. And it's not just high ticket. I mean, Russell Brunson's, and I know you know Russell, but his VP of partnerships, Ben, just told me the other day that well over half of their consumers or their customers have come from his books. So, and yes, ClickFunnels is a $97 software or $297, whatever. Now they have different levels and price points, but I'm just saying over half, that was pretty fascinating to me. I was like, wow, over half have come from his books alone. And it's interesting. So it doesn't have to be high ticket, but why waste the opportunity they read the book, they love it, they're engaged. Why waste the opportunity to not direct them to what it is you have or you're offering on the back end?
Yeah, I like that. And I think in the case of something like a ClickFunnels, you're looking at LTV, right? It's a $97 product, but for a lot of people, it's the type of product that you build the business around. Yeah. And so once you're locked in with it, usually most softwares, the recurrings die after 3 to 6 months. But something you're building like that on, maybe it's 16 months, maybe it's 2 years, I don't know. But a lot of people, once they're locked in for fucking ever.
Yeah. Well, with ClickFunnels, I mean, we're the same way. We have over 1,000 funnels in here and another account where, there's several hundreds of funnels. It's like, there's a big stickiness factor, right? It's hard to get out of, not that I want to get out, but I'm just saying it's built there. So it would be very difficult for me to move anywhere else. So I feel like they have a unique advantage there versus just some random software that you use one time for one thing, that kind of thing. And some people are like, I don't really care about products and services in the back end. I don't even want to sell coaching or courses. I just want to speak on more stages, right? I want a book that I can send to all these people that are promoting, stage promoters, and say with a little handwritten note saying, hey, here's my book. I'd love to be on your stage. And quite frankly, that's so grassroots and old school, but it works. It works really well. We've had tons of clients who've used it to get on certain podcasts that are charging $30,000. And all of a sudden they write this best-selling book. They write a little handwritten note, send it to the person, the head person that's doing the podcast, and they're on the podcast for free. It's interesting how it works. It does open doors. We've seen it open literally thousands of doors over the past 20 years, for sure.
How important is it to hit one of the bestseller lists? And what's the difference in the list between being like an Amazon category bestseller versus a New York Times bestseller or whatever?
Last year in November, the Wall Street Journal list actually went away. So we used to get our clients to the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, USA Today bestseller list. Well, 2 years ago, USA Today took away their bestseller list, came back 6 months later, a very changed list, more indie, just totally different ballgame. And then the next year, there's a company called BookScan that has all this data when someone makes a bestseller, because a lot of people are like, oh, I want to be this. I want to be this bestseller, that bestseller. And quite frankly, let's be honest, no one's like, oh, hey, Brad, you made the bestseller list. Which list did you make? No one really cares, right? Which list it was. But But when BookScan got sold to Circana, and Circana basically supplies that data to the Wall Street Journal, to USA Today, New York Times, they basically say, here's the number of book sales that these books made, tripled or quadrupled the amount of the contracted that they're paying to get that data. And so Wall Street Journal just said, we're not doing that, right? And so Wall Street Journal, the list went away. So here we were getting people, marketing people until they hit that list over and over and over, and then it went away. And we were like, now what, right? So really all that's left now is New York Times and Amazon. And Amazon, quite frankly, again, if someone hits a bestseller list on Amazon, it's a different game than it is on Barnes & Noble. It is a different game than it is on New York Times. New York Times is actually chosen by an editorial team. Yes, sales matter, but there are people like Ed Milet, for example, is a good one, right? His book had like 100,000 plus sales, didn't hit the New York Times bestseller list. Why is that, right? So it just goes to show you can have a bazillion sales and still not hit the New York Times. I mean, there's a lot of factors that come into play. The biggest one being there's a group of people that vote whether it makes it or not. So it's completely out of your control. So we don't ever offer that or sell that because we have no control. We could go get a gazillion sales and you still don't make it. So that's not a service you can sell, right? But with Amazon bestseller, we market every single book that we publish to bestseller. And yes, it's a totally different game. It's not as prestigious, but quite frankly, again, when they have a book, if it's marketed and they've hit best-selling author, they can call themselves a best-selling author. That's really what they're after. We don't make it a bigger deal than it is. We're not trying to be out there and go, oh, it's such a big deal, because it's really not a huge deal. But I will say this. Every stage, like every event that you travel to a lot of events, I do too. Every single person gets up on that stage, best-selling author, best-selling author, best-selling author, best-selling author, every single one. So it's just kind of I feel like for a lot of these people, it's just okay, I did it. I hit best-selling author. But on Amazon, yes, it's a different game because it's category driven. And there's 16,000 categories, right? And it's their algorithm is set for an hour algorithm. So every hour, new bestseller, new bestseller, new bestseller, right? Those lists turn over every single hour. So we don't try to hide or say, there's no like secret, like, look, here's how it works. Here's what it does. Here's the value and the benefit. And to some people, they're really excited about that. Some people could care less, right? But yeah, it's a really good question because we get asked that a lot,
Damn. So Amazon is giving a new bestseller every hour in 16,000 different categories?
That's right. It's an hourly algorithm. Now, the thing is that I don't feel like is okay. If you're putting them in a category, like let's say, like we have a guy that, a name you would know, he's been number one in business consulting since last July. Okay. So that's really cool. Business consulting is a big category. It's a good category. But what I don't like about a lot of these little companies that come along and they sell people like, oh, we're going to hit bestseller, and they put them in like the dog category, the dog toy category when their book is about consulting. I'm like, seriously? So that's like weird and cheating. But I feel like that's going to go away. Amazon recently has, and Ingram, all the places are upgrading from human reviewers to AI. And so that's actually stopping a lot of that, which is good. And there's some good and some bad that's coming with that. But the good news is that the cheating and putting someone in like a dog toy category when their book is about business, ridiculous, right? But that is, I feel like that's for sure going away now that things are more AI driven versus driven by a human being having to review every single book.
Yeah, but to your point, and that's obviously a ridiculous example, putting them in a dog category. But
it happens all the time,
right? But doing something like, a smaller business vertical than business consulting is probably an easy win to get somebody on the bestseller list.
It's an easier win, yes, for sure. And honestly, people will say, well, how easy is it or how hard is it? And quite frankly, because it changes so frequently and it's every hour, you don't really know that until right before they launch. Right before they launch, like for instance, if we were in self-help or personal development and Tony Robbins decides to launch his book in self-help that week, he's going to win because he's got a 18 million person email list or whatever it is, right? So he's going to get the number one person in sales. He's going to get all of that. But it depends on how many affiliates you have, what email marketing has been done, what ads have been done. And the thing is, once you hit bestseller, it's actually not that hard to maintain if you do ads, and not even Facebook or Instagram ads, but Amazon ads. So Amazon is more favorable. We've seen more of about a 7-to-1 return on Amazon ads overall in general versus a 2-to-1 return on like a Facebook or an Instagram ad. So I feel like Amazon favors authors who are doing that and then coming back and advertising on their platform. So it's easy to maintain and keep it there, which is, it's not easy, but you have to spend money to do so. But still, if you're spending, like I've got one client spending, 20 grand a month, but he's making, 6 figures a month. So he's getting like a 7-to-1 return. So it makes sense, right? And then he's got this best-selling book. And so when people decide to come in and join his $50,000 mastermind, they look him up and it's like, oh, he's everywhere, right? Best-selling author, best-selling book. He's got all these things, and it helps him grow his business.
How important is it to pick a publishing path? Meaning, does it matter whether you self-publish versus use a traditional publisher? How does that weigh into kind of the book launch model?
Yeah, great question. So there's 3 paths. There's kind of like traditional old school path. And the traditional old school path, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, I want to write a query letter and send it out to my agent and him send it out to all the publishers and somebody pick me and pay me $100,000 advance. And I will tell you, we work with some of the biggest names in the business, even some celebrities, celebrity athletes, people like that, and big names. And if they don't have an email list or some way to sell books, like, or a massive following, they're not getting an advance. And what many people don't realize is that advance is a draw against book sales. So you're getting an advance, and then you're going to actually owe them money if your book doesn't sell. You're going to have to pay back some of that money. So it's a draw against how many sales you make. So it's like the old school way to do things. And it's very, very, very rare. If you're not a Tony Robbins, it's very rare that you're getting an advance per se. But there's that model. And I feel like that model, obviously it's traditional. It's been around for 100 years, but it's very outdated. It's been around, people, since the 80s, they don't do things differently. They don't market your book. They don't care about if it hits bestseller. They don't care about what happens to it on the back end. They own and control your content. So there's that model, right? And then there's self-publishing. Pretty obvious. You go onto Amazon, you self-publish your book, you upload it, you wait for sales. Unless you're a marketer, it's cheap, it's easy. But I will say, a lot of clients, when they self-publish, once they hire a good editor, once they hire a designer, once they hire someone to build out their funnel, once they hire someone to format their book and do all of those things, you've spent more money than you would have spent if you just gone to a publisher. And then the third option is hybrid publishing, which is what we basically take we're an actual imprint. You're not self-publishing. We actually have an imprint, but we take the both of best worlds, the both of what traditional old school publishing has to offer, the best of what self-publishing has to offer, combine the two to give the biggest and best outcome for the client. Like our clients as entrepreneurs, they want to own and maintain control and the copyright to their content. Obviously, they want to be able to change it. They want to be able, if they get, we had a client that they turned her book into a movie, a Lifetime movie, whatever. They want the rights to it. So whatever happens, they own and control the copyright, the rights. They can change the content. They pay a one-time fee, but they don't pay, 30 to 60% or 80% of their royalties in the back end to the publisher. So it's like they're still paying a one-time fee, but they get the lion's share of the income on the back end. And then the other thing I would say is unique about what we do is our clients aren't really writing books. They're actually recording them. So we actually write out a detailed outline, we speak the book, we transcribe it, and we do what's called a developmental edit. So it's a really heavy, not just, hey, check the spelling. It's like syntax, tonality, flow, readability, all the things. So that's like the third way and third option. And there's all 3 of those options, but there's a lot of confusion because when people go to publish, they're like, oh, I've got to go get an agent. You know what I mean? Well, maybe, or I'm going to self-publish and this is what I'm expecting. I feel like because we were marketers before we were publishers, we understand we're trying to help the client monetize and maximize the lifetime value of that book and the back end and the whole entire, as many leads as possible, as much money as possible from the act of publishing the book.
Well, I think you've got what you outlined is one, for you, it's not just the book publishing, right? For your company, it's not just the book publishing, it's about the monetization engine. But relative to just the different models of book publishing, the through line across the board is you still have to figure out the fucking marketing. And people have this misconception that if they get a traditionally, and I think it's eroding a little, but they think that if they get a traditional publisher, they are buying the marketing. And the fact is they're not at all. There was a time when they were buying distribution, but now because everything's done online, you're not even really buying that. You know, you might buy your way into a couple stores, but not really.
You're buying your way into, hey, when you're done, here's 5 PR firms, go hire one of them. And it's all of them are like 90 to 180 day contracts. You're going to pay $10,000 to $25,000 a month. And you're going to pay that money to a PR firm and see what you get. And the big traditional companies don't care about the marketing. But everybody thinks that that's what I'm going to sell millions of books and I'm going to get millions of dollars. And it just doesn't work that way.
Nope, that's been my experience too. So tell me what the elements are of a good book launch.
The one thing that's most important, because a lot of people are like stuck in this. We hear it all the time. They're like, yeah, I want to do a pre-launch. I'm like, you want to do a pre-launch because you saw someone else do it. And you think that was like successful for them, but they don't even know why they want to do a pre-launch. And pre-launch is kind of like, again, it's sort of like an outdated model. It doesn't do you any, there's no added benefit of doing a pre-launch over doing a launch all at once, where basically any affiliates you've done, any ads you've run, we get everybody together we do like a Zoom launch. We started doing these in COVID. And we were outperforming the pre-launches like 10 to 1. It was crazy. But now what it is, it's just because Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all of these platforms where you sell these books through distribution channels, because we also put books into distribution channels, and it's like 40,000 places where they sell their book. But once you have all these different places, they favor hourly sales. So the more sales you can get in a small period of time, you don't have to start pre-selling your book and then all of a sudden turn it on to publish. And then all of a sudden, okay, all those sales count. You can actually invite everybody, build up the hype, invite everybody and do like a Zoom launch, do the same thing, and then continue that momentum with ads and an email marketing list at the same time, which is what we do. And it accomplishes the same thing. And honestly, it's better because the longevity of it is longer when it's done that way versus over time. Like, hey, I've been inviting people to a funnel for 7 months. But if everybody's emailing, posting on social media, texting, doing all their SMS, all their campaigns at once, that's where you're getting the biggest bang for your buck. That's like where they get the best results. And then to maintain that, it's doing Amazon ads. The other thing is, when you do an email campaign, you're sending out a link. So to Amazon, it looks like, okay, they came from a link. But when you do a launch and people are organically searching for your book, searching for the name of your book, searching for the title of your book, purchasing it, and then at some point also leaving a review, that's a verified purchase and review, that actually behooves the author in a big way. So there's a lot of these kind of minuscule, silly little things that all add up to a big thing, but that's where they get the biggest bang for their buck and the biggest results. It's just people don't know what they don't know. It's nothing hard or complicated. It's just these dumb little things that after you do a few thousand of these, you go, oh, here's the thing. Here's the magic sauce.
What are the biggest mistakes people make when they're trying to launch a book on their own?
Oh, for sure. Well, like you said, most of the people aren't marketers, right? Or they have some marketing experience, but they think that the way they market their webinar is how they're going to market their book, right? So it's a little different. Book marketing is a little bit different. I would say too, the one thing we see a lot is people don't put as much consideration into their title and their cover. Covers are everything, like the first impression of your cover. And people we see people now that will bring us covers. They're like, yeah, I created this in Canva. And we're like, ugh.
Ouch.
Ouch. Or I edited it myself. My brother-in-law edited it. I'm like, ugh. Or you see it formatted. And when you open a book, like the chapters are supposed to start on the right side and their chapters are starting on the left side. I'm like, who formatted this book? They do dumb things like that. And it's like, it's a credibility play, right? That you put that out to the world, you globally distribute it. Now it's in 40,000 locations. It's hard to take back, right? So it's out there in everybody's hands. And if it's got typos or a crappy cover or it's formatted improperly or wasn't edited well, it's a bad look. It actually has the opposite effect, So I feel like a lot of the mistakes are made before they even launch the book. But the biggest one is, I'm a marketer. They don't understand the ins and outs and the nuances of a distribution platform and of Amazon itself. Even the settings and how to set it up and the SEO and the meta tags and just, again, dumb little bitty things, but little bitty things that add up to be a great big thing and determine the ultimate success or the lack of success of their book launch.
Yeah, that's super helpful. You mentioned before we kicked off that you are working on a software right now. Tell me about the software.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's been in development for about a year and a half. It's called publish.ai, which is really cool. Everyone's like, how did you get that name? We had to pay a good amount for the domain. But super excited for what's to come. Ultimately, we set off thinking we were going to help create a book publishing platform, just a tool to help people publish books, a tool to not, again, we talked a little bit about this before, but not something that generates. I'm not looking for, hey, pop your stuff into this AI algorithm and it's going to spit out a book. Nobody wants to read that, right? Nobody wants to read emails written by that. Nobody wants to read social media content just written by AI with no human tonality or stories or emotion behind it, right? But we were thinking, hey, let's publish a book publishing software. Let's create a book publishing software that would help people. It would be AI assisted, not AI generated. So it would help them create a really solid table of contents, help them create a winning title, help them rework their subtitle, things like that. And as we got, I would say halfway along, we were like, we use these guys from Google. There used to be AI engineers at Google 10 years ago. So I know everyone's like, oh, ChatGPT, Claude, but guess what? Siri and Alexa, all of those things are AI too. And these guys have been in AI for 10 years at Google. So they're based here in the US. And they're really good prompt engineers, right? They're really, really good at prompt engineering. And they were like, the book piece is cool, but really the content overall is really what people are, the emails, the newsletters, the social media content, the videos, the courses, all of these things. And so we sort of instead of launching it and just doing books, we waited. We've been in development for about a year and a half. And now we're going to make it just a content publishing software, which will help people. It's AI assisted, but we've got other, our own language model and some things built in, some really amazing prompts. And it's kind of like wizard driven where it pulls them through, but it's going to help them create good content. Again, not something that just spit out by AI, something that actually used a little bit of their brain power combined with our prompts. It's going to create an amazing product that it spits out at the end. So, I'm really, really excited. It's been software development's no easy thing. It's a beating. I'm not going to lie, but we're really close to getting to beta and excited to just bring that to the world and bring in, for us, it's a continuity model. We're bringing it in as a continuity model because we don't have that in our business. But excited to just help. It's going to bring a lot of value to the people that we serve, and we're excited about that.
Cool. Yep. Software development is an interesting game.
Oh, yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal. And it's never done.
Well, you have been involved in a bunch of businesses over time. You've been doing this a while. A lot of people that listen are starting on their journey or, there's a wide range, but what advice would you give a 25-year-old entrepreneur starting something today?
I think the biggest thing that helped me initially, and it's kind of cliche, but was investing in a mentor that showed me somebody who I knew had been where I wanted to go, right? He had been where I wanted to go and he had done it already. So I just learning from people, because there's a lot of courses and things, but I feel like you need the ability to ask what you're going to fall, you're going to fail, you're going to mess up, and you need someone to ask questions to, like taking courses and such. It's great to read books and do courses, but you need someone, whatever, a coach, a mentor, whatever you want to call it, you can go to and say, hey, this didn't work out. I did this, but I need to do this. Can you walk me through that or whatever? You need that kind of support, right? It took me a while to gain the confidence to invest money in myself. But once I did, I was like, God, what was I waiting on? Like, that was the best thing I ever did. Now, because I got there way faster, just, and it was like way easier. I
Yeah.
was falling down, but it was like, oh, here's how you get back up, and here's what you need to do, and here's who you need to call. And I was like, had I known that early on, I would have invested way earlier. I was just too chicken because I thought, oh, it's costs a lot of money and it might not work.
A lot of entrepreneurs are afraid to invest in a mentor or a coaching program because of the unknown outcome to it. And also, in fairness, there are a lot of shitty ass people out there selling information. I think the part of what reinforces that belief system, and I hear this a lot from the youngest entrepreneurial generation, is this idea that they are the most educated group that has existed yet because information is everywhere. And they grew up with information being everywhere. And I will say, while that statement independently is true, you cannot conflate the exposure to information with education and understanding and experience. And so what you're buying with mentorship is somebody that has actually been down that road. I want a brain surgeon that has done 1,000 surgeries, not one that has read books about it to no end. Well, Cris, I love it. It's great to get some time in. Where do you want to point people? Where should people find out more about you or Game Changer Publishing or the new software or whatever?
No, absolutely. GameChangerPublishing.com or www.publish.ai. We'll have more information about the software on the website soon. Or just follow me on Instagram. Official Cris Cawley is my Instagram handle. And I would love to absolutely any way we can serve people or help people in any way. Even conversations like this, just having a conversation sometimes about things like this. Anything with marketing, entrepreneurship, all the things I very much appreciate and value. And of course, if someone wants to publish a book or market their book, we know a few things. So happy to serve or help however we can.
Great. Cris, thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me here today.